Story 1. Because companies offer 3% annual wage increases at a maximum after you have been with the company for more than 2 years, it is despicable. Everywhere I go, you come in, get a raise at 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year, each about 5 to 7%, and then annual increases are only 3% and are capped across the board for all floor workers. This is less than inflation. Goodbye. Story 2. My pay increases from job changes. 24,000 to 38,000 to 45,000 to 48,000 to over 100,000. I stayed at each job for about 2 years, except the third company, where I stayed for about 5 years. You can see that during the longer employment, the pay increases were smaller. This covers roughly 10 years, and the only significant raises occurred when I switched jobs. The largest pay increase happened when I left my day job to focus on my own business. Your mileage may vary. The main reason I changed jobs was for higher pay. Raises at these companies were minimal, and my cost of living was rising, so I had to make a change. Story 3. There have been several reasons, most of them revolve around money and poor management. I have taken a pay cut to leave a bad position with terrible leadership. Money is always the answer. I changed careers about 15 years ago, and in that time I have changed jobs 5 times. Each time it was because I wanted to move up or take on more responsibility and ultimately make more money. However, I was not given the chance, so I went out and found that opportunity in another company. I have been able to earn close to a 6-figure salary without a college education. If I had not improved my skills and knowledge to find a better position, I would still be making $20 per hour. Story 4. Pay hike and people I work with. From 2018 to around 2024, I worked in environments with very high turnover. 3 or 6 month contracts were the norm. They were already upset about the other 4 employees leaving. I tried to keep my job as long as I could, but bosses changed as frequently as everyone else. You get a new manager every other day, and they don't care how long you have been at the company or how much expertise you have gained. All they watch are statistics. If you are below a certain metric, you receive a complaint and more pressure. In the end, this leads to stress and affects both physical and mental health. It is very hard to stay and act as if everything is fine. Story 5. I'm a millennial, and conventional wisdom in my early career was that if you have been in a role for 2 years without a meaningful raise, increased responsibility, or promotion, then you need to look elsewhere. You are likely stuck where you are at that point, and the next meaningful pay increase will come from another opportunity. Story 6. For many people, job hopping is about finding a role that fits how they think, what motivates them, and the kind of pace or structure they thrive in. Sometimes it takes a few trial and error cycles to realize the issue is not the company's but a mismatch between the person and the work environment or responsibilities. Unfortunately, most people recognize this too late in their career. Nowadays, there are online tools like the Pigment Strength Discovery that can help you gain clarity. It maps your strengths, decision style, and the type of work that energizes you, so you are not constantly changing jobs trying to find the right fit without knowing what that looks like. So it is not always about pay. Story 7. Pay increase and overall career growth. You do not learn new things by staying at the same role or level for long, and pay increases from a new job generally outearn annual increases and internal promotions on average. You are almost certainly disadvantaging yourself if you are early to mid-career in most private sectors and not pursuing new opportunities, assuming salary and career growth are priorities for you. Over a 10-year period, a person who changes jobs every 2 to 3 years will usually outperform someone who stays in one place in terms of pay, title, and overall career growth experiences, provided they do not make unwise lateral moves. Those who stay at one place and advance tend to be exceptionally talented individuals who also benefit from timely opportunities. It is possible to be great and ready for promotion but still lack openings at your current company to move up. Story 8. If you see someone who works in business-to-business sales, especially larger enterprise-style roles, jumping from company to company every 18 to 24 months, it is because they are actually ineffective salespeople. In enterprise business-to-business sales, getting up to speed and starting to close deals takes time. During the first 6 months, a sales representative is not really expected to show any real results. All they need to do is communicate the plans they have. In the next 6 months, they are expected to start closing deals, but no one will question them if they don't, as long as they talk convincingly about how close deals are and how they almost secured one, but it slipped into the next quarter. After the first year, management will start wondering if the salesperson is ineffective. It usually takes approximately another 6 months to fully confirm that they are not close to winning any significant deals. At this point, the company wants to remove the underperforming salesperson without going through a lengthy process. In places where workers' rights exist, this can be more challenging. The salesperson is informed that it would be better to find a new job before being terminated. The salesperson begins looking for a new job and claims during interviews that they hit targets from month 5 at their current company, presenting impressive but false numbers to appear successful. The current company is willing to provide a positive reference to get rid of the salesperson with minimal disruption. The salesperson joins a new company, where they are again not expected to show real results for the first 6 months. The cycle repeats. Story 9. In the last 3 jobs I changed, I received a pay increase of $3.50, $3, and $10, respectively. It is not smart economically to stay with one place longer than about 5 years maximum, and that is in an ideal situation. Just about the only way to get a raise these days is to move on to another company. Employers can talk about loyalty all they want, but they are only concerned with it going one way. Make no mistake, it does not matter what job you have. If your boss could find someone to do it for $5 an hour cheaper without a drop in quality, you would be replaced. Story 10. If you are working a job where there is no potential for growth in terms of your skills, it is time to find another job that aligns with your future goals. Many people stay in jobs where they are not learning new things or gaining new skills, which means they are wasting their time. Perhaps I am in the minority, but doing the same tasks every day without learning to improve myself feels boring and unproductive. Constantly learning new things means making progress, whether small or large. Additionally, when you change jobs every 2 to 3 years, your salary should increase by a significant amount, and sometimes you can even double your salary. That is why I do not focus on raises, because they will never double my salary. It is easier to find a new job and negotiate a higher salary. Story 11. It takes about 1.5 years for my new job, rose-colored glasses, to fade, and I am very done putting up with the unreasonable rules, incompetent management, and complaining coworkers at that job. I will find a new job and start the process over again. Story 12. Job hopping took me from $55,000 to $130,000 in a few years, far ahead of my original schedule if I had just stayed at the first company and received raises. My current role, however, has somehow made me feel like I possibly cannot be as happy anywhere else, so I have been here for more than 4 years. Story 13. As most have noted, it comes down to pay for most. It has been general advice passed around the workplace for at least 15 years now that if you stay in company, you might get 5 to 10% for a promotion, maybe even nothing. Switch companies, probably more like 20%. Pretty simple math. It is possible to get more by staying internal, but it basically depends on who your leaders are. I have a person who I wanted to promote earlier this year. He basically needed about 30% to get him to a reasonable pay range for the new position. He was being undercompensated before I got there, which made the number bigger. I had to fight with human resources and my own leadership for 1.5 months to make it happen. Getting my boss, the vice president, on board was easy. He used to be a management consultant and he saw the value. But even with both of us, the president kept wanting to just give him 10% because there was this internal rule that promotions should cap out at that. We finally won, but had to compromise by bumping his pay in 3 steps rather than all at once. 15% immediately, 8% after 6 months, and another 8% after another 6 months. I know for a fact I would not have had to do any of that for an external hire. It would have sailed through with zero hassle, even though we would almost certainly have had to pay the external more than the internal promotion. I absolutely look down on leaders who are unwilling to fight for their people, but I do understand it. It would have certainly been the path of least resistance for me to give up after the first pushback and just hire externally. That is the inertia you are fighting against when you do not change companies. Once you are in, you are a cost to be minimized, even if it is harmful and almost nobody agrees with it. Unless you have leaders willing to fight for you, you will just end up making less in the long run. A lot less. After spending 12 years with one company, I bumped my pay by 60% by switching. In fairness, a good chunk of that was the step up to management at that time, but I probably would have gotten 20 to 30% for a role similar to what I had. If your leaders go to bat for you, consider staying. If not, switch anytime you can. Get that money because most companies will dump you in a heartbeat if they think it makes them anything. Story 14. Where I am at, and I am sure this is common in other places, there is an unwritten retention raise rule. You go out and get a new job offer somewhere else, then they will give you a bigger raise than they normally would for the yearly merit increases. We get 2 to 3% a year, but if you have a job offer from somewhere else, you can get 10 to 12%. It is so unreasonable. How many people do this and decide they actually want the new job after weighing the choices? And if it is common, how much does this system disrupt the hiring process for people actually in need of a job? Story 15. It makes sense in your 20s to establish yourself professionally, which involves finding the best organizational and career fit. Once you have 8 to 10 years of work experience, job hopping becomes more of a liability if you are seeking to transition from being an individual contributor to leadership. Story 16. Yes, and I've regretted the only time I stayed at one company for 5.5 years. It is just mind-boggling how recruiters get bigger budgets for new hires, but when it comes to retaining talent, best I can do is 6%. New position? We are going to use your old salary as a weapon against you. The floor of this position, for which you are perfectly qualified and will require minimal to no training, is more than 20% higher than your current pay. We are going to make an exception and lower the floor because, God forbid, we give more than a 20% pay increase internally. Story 17. Job hopping is how people under 40 get raises. Companies will offer you 50 cents a year. A new employer will offer you $2 more. Then there is the logjam of long-term managers. Want a promotion? You have to find it elsewhere. No one here is retiring until 2028. Story 18. It's the pay and the treatment. There is no loyalty anymore for sticking with one place. No pensions, more work, low pay, benefits getting worse as time goes on. Many people are paid less than recent hires. Why does this system exist? I would be happy with some kind of longevity pay increase or even a bonus commensurate with years of service. But those things are rare. Story 19. I used to. I was a joke in my family for a while. I did it mostly out of boredom or burnout. I found a cool thing in my current job as a hospital nurse aide, but I am starting to experience burnout from that as well. Story 20. What I need from a job. Good money. Engaging and rewarding work. Good culture, people I enjoy working with. Opportunity to grow, learn, and advance my career. Leadership that I want to support. You cannot really tell if the job you are joining meets these criteria until you join and stay for a while. I usually get a good sense after 3 to 6 months, but I do not usually want to leave until year 2 because there is usually something I can learn or new experience and expertise I can gain. Once that is exhausted, I try to find a job that meets more of my criteria. I have taken a pay cut to change jobs because some or all other criteria were unacceptably low. Story 21. For me personally, I could never stay in a job for long. 4 years is my personal best. Issues with the economy, staffing, the company itself, and maybe just the financial industry as a whole have gotten in my way. I'm one of the easiest people to get along with. I have been told that many times. I don't make enemies in my personal life or at work. But there's one key, glaring issue. I'm not very skilled. I have a bachelor's degree in accounting but did not pass the certified public accountant exam. I passed several professional exams in the financial securities field. However, they are just licenses with no practical application in a field that values sales skills more than anything. I am better at helping people with issues than pressuring them to buy something they don't really need or want. The economy has changed over my 26-year career. Some major cycles have come and gone. In the end, I am not very skilled. That is why no one keeps me around and why I have chased better opportunities that turned out much worse. Story 22. It was always about my manager. The pay increases were a nice side benefit. First job, 1 year. I got fed up with always being assigned to take over other people's messed up projects to fix them and then give them back so they could get all the credit. Found a new job that took me from $45,000 to $70,000 total compensation. Second job, 2 years. My manager was kind of cool, but my ideas in meetings were constantly dismissed while other coworkers, who happened to be male, would later say the exact same thing and get praised. Found a new job paying $100,000 total compensation. Third job, fourth company, 3 years. After an acquisition, my manager left and I had to report to this incredibly rude and belligerent person. I complained enough that she hired another manager between us. This new manager was even more toxic and incompetent, plus I was essentially pushed down the organizational hierarchy. Found a new job paying $125,000 total compensation. Fourth job, sixth company, 3 years. After another acquisition, my total compensation ballooned to $300,000, which was awesome. But my manager left, and once again, I did not like his replacement. I transferred to another part of the company. Fifth job, still sixth company, 2 years. Our whole team got laid off. I should have stayed in my previous role. Then I would still be working there today. Sixth job, seventh company, 2 years. Total compensation is down to $185,000, but I don't really care about it anymore. After a year and a half on the job, they changed my manager. She's pretty inexperienced and insecure and doesn't know how to manage someone as senior as I am. She constantly annoys me. I am looking for another role now. I do wonder if it's me. Why can't I be resilient and adaptable when my manager changes? But then I also wonder, why can't my new manager just be calm and normal? Why do I always get someone difficult when their predecessor leaves? Anyway, I have enough money at this point that I don't care how it looks if I keep changing jobs. Someone is always willing to hire me regardless. Story 23. Is it for the pay increase? No, it is because they got bored of the artwork hung on their office walls. Story 24. I don't job hop. I think it looks bad on a resume because it shows a lack of commitment or suggests you might be problematic to many companies. However, I understand why people might do it. I see 2 reasons. One of the main reasons is that it seems you can only get a meaningful pay raise these days by changing jobs. Sure, I've received small annual increases that match inflation when it is steady. But a significant pay raise? No. Every time I made a substantial increase in income, it was by getting another job. The other reason is perhaps not knowing what a person wants to do for a living and going through that journey. Story 25. I have had over 150 jobs in my lifetime, ranging from busboy to principal information technology architect. I left jobs for the following reasons. 1. Money. 2. Commute. 3. Manager and team fit. 4. Type of work I was doing. 5. Value and recognition for my work. Money was never the main factor. My current work is not the most exciting, but it pays well. I have a good manager and team and no commute. If any of that changes, I will leave. Story 26. There is always at least one reason to change jobs. If it is a scheduled career strategy, then the main reason is the pay increase. Story 27. I used to change jobs quite often because I did not like them and wanted something I enjoyed more. Story 28. The first time they offered me a favorable deal to keep me at half the industry standard wage for the same job, just because I intended to study alongside work. The next company did not want to provide me with the necessary equipment to do my job as a wholesale vendor for such equipment. Another company had more people doing my job within a year than the total number of employees, so I left quickly. Then I found a company with decent pay, but I developed a chronic disease that prevents me from performing my job anytime soon, so I might switch again. Story 29. Experience in many different fields. When I was younger, I apprenticed in whatever took my fancy. Then, when I was competent, I moved on to something else I found interesting. It was really fun. Story 30. It is not by choice for me. My autism, self-reliance, and abandonment issues usually cause me to crash every 6 to 9 months. Story 31. If I hadn't changed jobs every few years, I would have been stuck in the low-end information technology sector making $12 to $22 per hour for my whole life. There was an abundance of those poor-quality jobs in my area some 25 years ago. Every time I quit, I got a pay increase. Not only that, it often resulted in me relocating to different cities, which had different opportunity pools. Over the span of the last 25 years, I went from making as little as $10 per hour to as much as $220,000 per year. That was not by accident. It was a constant willingness to take risks and push for more. Once I reached that $220,000 job, I hated it the most of any job I ever had. It was basically babysitting some incompetent chief executives who made 10 times that despite having no actual skills beyond blaming others and making excuses for their failures. When I left that job, I took a 50% pay cut and was much happier. Now, in my mid-40s and preparing to start searching for a new job for the 11th time in my life, I am less worried about pay increases and more about where I can stay for the next 10 years without worrying about my job disappearing. I don't know what that is or how to get there. I will figure it out or I will not. Story 32. I left a job after being denied a raise. 1 year later, I was offered the job again at a more senior level, but I wanted twice my previous pay. I had a great relationship with my boss, but he could not provide a raise at that time. Story 33. I started adopting a 2-year up or out mentality about 5 years ago. It has resulted in nearly doubling my pay and climbing 4 rungs up the ladder. I skipped supervisor and went straight to manager. Basically, you can get the hang of a job in 2 years, which means you are not growing anymore. So, you should aim to be promoted within your company or consider leaving. Story 34. Since 2019, I have had 4 jobs. Each one came with a raise of at least 20% and significant quality of life improvements. I now make nearly double what I did in 2019 and went from a non-air-conditioned shop environment to a comfortable desk job, all while keeping the same title. Story 35. For me, it has always been about changing work environments. I love my job and never dislike going to work, unless management is poor. I have had 11 jobs in 12 years. I went from $15 per hour to $28 per hour, with my side business making more than my full-time job. If I ever wake up not wanting to go to work, I immediately apply for new jobs or just quit on the spot. I have only gone to 1 interview and not gotten the job. Story 36. One thing that I have learned is that loyalty does not pay well. The best way to climb the corporate ladder and increase your salary is to change jobs every 1 to 3 years. Story 37. Oh, a prompt that I can answer from experience. I have been on my 4th job since 2020, with the shortest tenure being 7 months and the longest just over 2 years. Besides a minor pay increase, I have left every job because of management and leadership. It is soul-crushing to work in places that do not treat people well, and I am too old to waste my time with that. Story 38. Job security and industry relevance are most important. Companies tend to stagnate, and even if they use modern technology stacks and pay a fair wage when I join, after a few years they often do not stay up to date on technology or wages. Companies also frequently go through layoff cycles, so it is usually not very safe to stay at the same company for more than a few years at a time. Generally, joining about 6 months after a layoff means you have a few years before you need to worry about the next one. Story 39. I doubled my salary within 5 years, but it was mostly my trauma and anxiety that made me leave quickly, because I was not able to handle conflicts or issues, which are just a part of life. Now that I seek therapy, I am actually staying and not planning to leave anytime soon. I am happy where I am now. Story 40. It is not always a choice. In my case, I had trouble keeping a job. I am socially awkward, which can be challenging in customer-facing jobs, and those make up the majority of jobs in my area. As a result, I did not tend to last long. Story 41. I have worked for a publicly traded company with approximately 5,000 employees nationally for almost 9 years. The growth opportunities have allowed me to increase my salary from $35,000 to $100,000 during that time, with only an associate's degree in a completely unrelated field. Since joining, I went from knowing nothing about the industry to the company investing in me to obtain national certifications. Most recently, I joined the leadership team and received an increase in my annual bonus percentage. I am not saying I will stay with this company until I retire in about 20 years, but I would not have received this kind of pay increase if I had switched companies frequently, since I am not relying on a degree to get in the door. I am sure I am an anomaly in the current market, but this has been my experience. Story 42. I have yet to be offered a permanent position anywhere. In my country, there is a law that states if you employ someone in a temporary position for longer than a year, you must offer them a permanent position. The law was intended to protect workers but resulted in employers terminating contracts after a year to avoid hiring permanently. A similar situation occurred with minimum wage regulations in the United States. Story 43. I stick it out until something better is found, such as a better position or pay, or I am let go when it is evident I will not do more than the job description. It has helped me increase my salary expectations, but what I am looking for now is a non-toxic work environment without answering calls or taking work home with me. Story 44. It depends. I switched companies once but kept progressing and networking internally into better positions, so I would say it is all relative to people's circumstances. All at the same organization, 32,000 to 50,000 to 67,000 to 76,000 to 95,000. For some, what you are describing is their only way to progress. Story 45. If raises do not at least track inflation, you are making less money every year despite having more experience and responsibilities. If the company is unwilling to catch up, you move on. They will have to hire at the correct rate. They just hope that you will not want to deal with changing jobs so they can save money. Every few years, I gather my accomplishments and new responsibilities along with average and median pay for similar positions in my area and tell my employer that they need to close the gap. I like my job and the people I work with. Our local management is great and advocates for us. We just have to work with corporate leadership. I would rather stay where I am, but if it becomes too out of balance, I would leave. Story 46. That and management in most cases is terrible. People do not quit their jobs because they necessarily hate them. They quit the management. Story 47. To find the right place that values you for who you are. Like a plant, you do not just grow where you are planted. You grow where you are nourished. Story 48. A lot of times, employee turnover happens at companies, and you see the writing on the wall. It could be due to seeking better compensation, or it could simply be to escape a bad work environment. Story 49. I find it is not a good fit for me, so I move on. When I do find a good fit, I stay a bit longer, but that is quite rare. Story 50. My last job change doubled my salary after months of my previous manager not following through on his promise to give me a raise. Story 51. My goal is to have a pay increase, but I can never last long at any company. I am constantly underappreciated and mistreated. I do not fit in. They go through restructuring, and suddenly I go from being their star to the one holding them back. It is so painful. I just want stability and happiness in my life. Am I asking too much? I guess I am. Story 52. I do not make it a mission to change jobs frequently, but when a manager changes and it becomes clear that promoting me is not part of their strategy, I start looking for new opportunities. Story 53. Yes, for the increase in pay. I have never had a single pay rise or promotion. The dates on my resume curriculum vitae are filled with honest mistakes because Microsoft Word did not save the document correctly. Story 54. In my field, yes, it is. You get recruiters contacting you every other day, and since there is a lot of working from home, people joining and leaving the team every month or so, and very few tasks that require collaboration in the first place, it is extremely difficult to feel loyalty towards the company, the team, or anything of that nature. Then, if a recruiter promises you more money, in this economy, that is tempting. As it is so common, job hopping is not really seen as a red flag. They need more people far too much to care about that. Story 55. Never changed for the money. Changed for the length of hours sometimes, but mostly because I was getting bored and needed a new challenge at work to learn new skills. When I don't enjoy going into work, I start looking for a new job. Essentially, thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.